Welcome to episode 3 of Spinning Platters Presents How Did I Get Here? Today, our guest is Vickki Acuna. Vickki started out her time in the music business working for Part Time Punks as a street teamer. Spent some time working with me at Ticketfly, which, if you've been listening to these last couple of episodes, I worked at Ticketfly for a while. Uh, and then she eventually got a job with Golden Voice, handling social media and digital marketing for a couple of little known festivals, just tiny, tiny festivals. Something that I think is called Coachella, and another one, forgive the pronunciation, I think it's Stagecoach, something like that. Uh, Anyway, so she spent a couple years doing that, and now she's spending her pandemic working for an organization called Education LA. Well, not working for, creating an organization called General Election LA, which is leveraging dark venues and musicians that aren't currently able to tour due to the pandemic, and using them to help push the vote and just make awareness of the upcoming presidential election. There's a really great story at the end about DJing Coachella and then finding out you're on a bigger stage than you expect it to be. Anyways, it's good. It's a great story. And stay until the end. And yeah, open up a nice cold can of mango White Claw and enjoy the show. Vickki, welcome to How Did I Get There? How Did I Get Here? Not there. I know that we've been. I met you working at a music festival officially. I know that we talked as you while you were working with Spaceland. You have worked in music for what feels like most of your adult life, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a big chunk of my adult life has been spent within the music industry, and this was really kind of by chance, if I'm being completely honest. I didn't anticipate working in this space. However, when I was younger, when I was like a high school kid, I actually started throwing music events where I grew up, and it was really interesting being a 15-year-old kid going into what were like rental halls because where I grew up, I grew up in the Imperial Valley, and there isn't a ton of music events or arts or that much culture there. But it was really interesting to me because the bordering cities that were around me were also border towns. And across the border, there was a huge metropolitan city that had access to all of this stuff. Um, so I was really curious and started working with a few kids from the surrounding cities and figured out how to create music shows in these spaces that traditionally weren't used for that. And here's 15-year-old me walking in, talking to some older people, being like, "Hi, I'm Vickki. I really want to throw a show here. Here's kind of the roster. I have a contract. I can pay $500 for a rental fee. Do you have a bar? Like, what can these?" Just like having these really funny conversations as a teenager with people that are just like, "Who is this kid? What is what?" And when I decided to hop to LA, it was more for school, and I was focusing on the graphic design aspect of it. And I didn't really know anybody here. I didn't know what the cool music venues were. I had no idea like what the scene was like. And I ended up focusing on school for a few years. And then like my first job here was at an e-commerce like Latin company in human resources, which is not anywhere as appealing as a sexy and fun music industry. But I learned a lot. And I think that was part of it, right? Like understanding how like the human dynamics are in interacting with different people, because along the road I decided that I wasn't really passionate about that. I wasn't passionate about the the human resources part, but I was passionate about creating connections with people and figuring out how to utilize them to do something bigger than that. And my first official job in the music industry was with this organization called Part Time Punks that were based at the Echo. And I now thinking about it, this is really funny, but I responded to a Craigslist ad that said, looking for a street team, will pay, I think it was like $10 per show or whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, this would be something fun to do, like extra, like just on the side and get into shows for free. Like, that sounds great. And I ended up meeting the person who posted it in downtown at a coffee shop. And it was interesting because, like, I don't consider myself a really like punk looking person. And they're like, I felt like very normal. But I show up and it's like this girl, super tough looking girl, and like blue hair and like Doc Martens, and she's like, "Hey, what's up? Just wanted to make sure you're normal." And like, I have all the flyers for you in the back of my car, and I was like, "Great."
I love that she wanted to make sure you were normal, and that was the one thing you were afraid of most.
Yeah, and it was, and I was like, "Oh, cool." And so I followed her to her car, and I grabbed all these like flyers, and just started from there. And it was cool, kind of getting one to know all these venues around town, but also really dive into the punk culture of LA because there's so many layers to that here. And I feel really fortunate that I was able to interact with people who were older than me in those spaces and really get an understanding of like what I wanted to do and like who I wanted to be as a person, because their ethos of like the DIY and like the really close knit community was super impactful. And from there, it was just like, great. I was only 19 when I got that job. So I was like, cool, free shows. Very excited about that. And in exploring all these different niche like communities, because every show was different, right? Like Part-Time Punks caters to post-punk, regular punk, shoegaze, and they debuted a lot of like these really cool bands. Like for example, Dive. They presented their first show at the Echo ever, right? And it was like in these spaces that I got to learn how to do merchandise and how to communicate with people, how to create my own schedule, how to figure out what works in marketing. But once I turned 21, because I'd already hung out at the Echo like every other night because it was part of the job, I asked the manager there, I was like, hey, I know there's a position opening in the box office. I would love to work here. And his response was like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I hang out here. Pay me to hang out here. Like, I'm down to do that. And honestly, that was kind of like a blessing in disguise. I don't feel that I went the traditional route that most people went, like getting a degree in music and then taking on those internships. It was really just making those connections. And once I was in the space with Spaceland, which by the way, like is my alma mater, like that's I love them. I think they're fantastic. I was able to grow so much in that space and learn so much, not just about the actual events that they were putting on, but what it takes to build a team and what it takes to produce and continuously create a really cool culture around LA for a variety of audiences, not just one. And in that space, I learned, let's see, I did box office for a few years. I ended up doing a lot of like overall kind of like management stuff, like during the day, like making sure everything was clean, making sure all the posters were ready for their staff, making sure that like we were building things out that needed to be built out. And eventually that turned into me going into the office and doing like general work and figuring out the booking admin kind of stuff. And I was there for a while. And while I was doing that, I also got introduced to the Ticketfly family through a Spaceland friend called Sam. And she was like, hey, I need some extra help in this space. She's like, you already know the ticketing platform. So it would be pretty simple for you just to show up and do kind of customer service work at these shows. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And I was like, great, let's do it. And I ended up working as like independent contractor for Ticketfly, which is how I think I met you, Dakin, and a lot of the Ticketfly team at some point at events. And while I was doing that, I was like, well, I know ticketing, I know how to do this. And I was looking for a change, if I'm being honest. Like I had been at Spaceland for almost 4.5 years. And I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I took a step back and like really reevaluated what I was passionate about. And I was like, I need a break. I just need a break from all of it. Like I'd been go 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 for 4 years. It was like I was working 4 to 5 nights a week. I was constantly at the venue. My entire life just revolved around putting on shows or helping produce them in some aspect. And I was like, cool. And I saw that Ticketfly had an opening for a customer support job, and I was like, this seems chill. That's what I thought. And I really had enjoyed meeting all the folks at Ticketfly that I had already. They were all so talented, and like it was a different atmosphere than I was used to. So when I got to Ticketfly, the what I would say about the San Francisco music scene as opposed to the LA music scene is that you guys are a lot more open and willing to help people reach their goals and provide the tools to do it, because it didn't take much time before I got there that my friends at Ticketfly ended up being like, hey, like you've done merch. You want to do merch at the chapel? Hey, you've done this. You want to do X, Y, and Z? And I was like, oh, like sure, that's really nice of you. Like I hadn't expected that kind of open arms and a welcome, which was really, really cool. And even though my time was really brief, I think I was only there for about a year and a half in office. It was great to have that support, have a bunch of people that were all music heads and we're all passionate about one thing or another in that space. And just being like, yeah, you want to go to a show? You want to go grab coffee? You want to have dinner? And just like really building up these relationships that in my mind, like I still play trivia with all of the Ticketfly and Eventbrite kids like once a week. You know what I mean? Like that's not something I have from any other job. I think that's super cool. It's because we all really like each other, and that's what really made the workspace for me there. And I was halfway between another job at Ticketfly when my friend Gopi actually had posted on Twitter. Of course, everything I do is like really funny, and like of course a Craigslist ad, of course a Twitter ad, where he was looking for an assistant at Golden Voice, and he was primarily doing the digital strategy component of all the music festivals, that properties that they have. And I was like, well, I'm super techie. I love technology. I love figuring out how to do things. I love producing things. I love product development. I think this is something that's cool. And our conversation, we maybe had an hour-long conversation about it. And he was like, yeah, well, if you want it, send me your resume. Let's go. And a week later, he offered me a job. And I was just like, I can't say no because I know that this is the right choice to make and move forward and like continue to grow. And I did. And within a month, I was back in LA, and that was 2017. And that started my journey, my continuous journey with Golden Voice, right? Because as a freelancer and like contractor, a lot of the shows that I had already been working on were like big festivals. Like I had done EDC Las Vegas. I had done a ton of festivals here in LA. Like I remember working at the Block Party or something with you in LA.
Oh yeah, well we worked the that EDM festival, the Mad Decent Block Party.
Mad Decent. Yeah, I remember working that with you. And like, so again, a lot of these jobs were like, I was hustling. I was doing everything from like figuring out how to do the Wi-Fi to like guest list management to helping production, just like running around. And in that space, I had also got connected with a lot of the people that were already in Golden Voice, and a lot of these people had already given me opportunities, which was really awesome. Because before I went to Golden Voice full time, I had done all of the Coachella and Stagecoach customer support with my boss Danny for about 2 or 3 years. Which, by the way, learning experience, a completely different learning experience than like Ticketfly. It was like, here are these 2 or 3 festivals, really hone in on everything you need to know about everything, and like having to know every single aspect of a property was like, I was like, whoa, there's so much that goes on here, and there's so many different teams that are super talented creating all of these different things for just one event. And that was really cool.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the mother of all of them is the those 3 weekends in Coachella Valley. Like it almost sounds like a trial by fire experience.
A little bit. And but again, I think if I hadn't had all these like kind of customer facing jobs, I wouldn't have appreciated what I ended up doing as much, or I wouldn't have the understanding of why it was so important to keep the customer in mind when we're producing all of these products, right? And it's like, great. So I know what the customers are asking for. I know how we need to talk to them. And that became me being involved with a lot of the projects that we were bringing on, right? So it was kind of cool being able to sit down with a team and develop the websites for all of these properties, develop the mobile applications, content manage everything that was going into them, creating a voice for all these properties. That was also super important. And seeing them come to fruition, right? And it's just like you're just like, oh, yeah, this is cool. I don't know how exactly I managed to end up here when I started from way over there as a street team kid, but it worked out. And at Golden Voice, I just really got the opportunity to figure out how to communicate with so many departments. I think that was the biggest challenge, and creating cohesive ideas to present to people, and more importantly, be able to communicate with our fans effectively, and creating campaign strategies that by the way is hard. It's really hard, especially when you have a and everyone thinks like, oh, these groups are really big and they're like huge teams. I'm like, no, it's literally a group of like 15, 20 of us sitting around a table being like, hey, did you do this? Hey, did you do this? Can we do this? Can we not do this? Why or not? You know what I mean? It's just like a big brainstorm room. And like, it's a family. You're not always going to get along, you know? And really getting engaged there, which was really, really cool. And towards the end of my journey with them, I was like, I think I've accomplished all I can in this space for now, and want to be able to do something different. And so, what was it, 2019, September 2019, I went ahead and went freelance. And at first, I was like, well, what do I want to do? And my boss, who had been there previously doing digital strategy, who had hired me on, had actually gone on to creating his own agency. And I chatted with him a little bit about what I was trying to achieve, and kind of the work I was trying to do. And luckily enough, it came to a head that he was like, I actually am looking for someone to hop on the team, and you already know how to do everything. So this is kind of perfect. And I was like, great, that sounds awesome. And a lot of the work that we were doing at Tusk Agency was similar to what we had been doing for Golden Voice. And which, by the way, was like interesting in itself, that so many people looked towards these like 3 or 4 properties that we had been working on for like the past few years as like the standard for all festivals. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that was my response, because it was so silly. Because to me, it's just like, it's just me and my friends literally talking about stuff, figuring out how to showcase it to you. And having them understand that, like, oh yeah, like, we can do this. We can totally take exactly what we were doing and create it for other brands. And so a lot of the first few months that I was there, we were creating things for different festivals, like Something in the Water. We were partnering with like cannabis brands, did ease activations, did a ton of things that we would normally do, but just on our own. And that was really cool, getting to develop those ideas and work with the teams there. We have super talented folks, and it's like only a group of 4 or 5 of us. We're very small, but we're still able to create things that we were doing before, which was really cool. And then we got to a halt in March when the pandemic happened, right? And it's hard. It's hard for everybody. And just coming to terms with understanding that the way we knew the music industry might not ever be back in that same way, right? And adapting. Adapting is the most important part of what we had been doing. So coming to terms with what that looked like for us as an agency, as people, and we're just like, well, we have to react. And so one of the first projects that came out of the pandemic was our virtual venue, which was Stadio. We launched that in, I want to say, June, and we partnered with a few EDM DJs because we thought visually they could bring it to the table, because the concept behind the actual venue was that any touring act would be able to do the exact same thing that they would do on tours. They'll come in with like their tech specs, their lighting, their visuals, just plug it in and create the exact same thing. The only difference is now it's virtual and we can create whatever we want. And so that was also really interesting. And I think that project was different than other streams that I had seen, because we created like a virtual audience that almost kind of gave back the same feel of being in the social environment, which let's talk about social environments for a second, right? The entire component of our work is about people being social. The hardest part to bring back is the social aspect. Any of these live streams, anything that's being done online, you're just like, it's connection that people are missing. That's why you went to concerts. Like that's how you met some of your best friends. That's how you remember a lot of your youth, like hanging out, going to shows, just being a bunch of hooligans. Like that's the great part about it. And I don't think that not necessarily that our project is going to do that, but I don't think that we're going to be able to recreate that same aspect, regardless of what stream it is. So figuring that out, and then kind of figuring out what does our model look like? How are we presenting this to bigger brands? How are and like having a lot of conversations, because a lot of the conversations that we were having were just kind of introductory conversations for all these people, and it's like selling the product of something that people aren't used to. And right, that's the adaptation part and figuring out how we can collab on things in that space. So that was one of the really cool projects. And then we took on another event that I can't really say the name, but I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of a brief. It's a mix of a concert and sporting event as well as an EA games kind of event, which is
EA games, that's basically video gaming, right?
yeah.
Okay.
And so we're working on this campaign for 2021, and I'm not trying to be a downer, but a lot of the things that we're moving forward with are still going to be kind of in an if maybe mode. You know what I mean? Because we don't know what that looks like for 2021. We're all just trying to be very optimistic in the growth and like what live events will look like in the next couple months. What are going to be the parameters? How do we execute this? Like, does that mean the ticket costs are going to be more now because of the less capacity? All those things that most of us really hadn't thought about because it didn't occur to us that this might be an issue at some point. So a lot of learning on those kind of terms and continuing to develop digital strategy for other brands. And it's like, great, we know what we're good at. We know what we can continue to do. But aside from that, I want to talk a little bit about general election and what I've been doing in that space, because I think it's really important. With this pandemic came a lot of personal change, not just for me. I feel like for a lot of people. and in coming to a little bit more awareness, not that saying that I wasn't aware about racism or classism or anything like that, but just having these conversations with people, and more importantly, our friends and people that are close to us, because it's interesting. I know that I've had really intricate conversations with my father about this, and his feelings towards my feelings are different. And it's a generational age gap thing.
You did say before that you were raised in a border town, so you
Yeah,
know what the Mexico American border light is like. So I'm kind of curious as to like how your father feels about this administration and whatnot, based on just living closer to where a lot of this madness is happening.
totally. So a little background, just so you know, kind of the lay of the land of where I grew up. It's very rural. It's predominantly Hispanic. However, because of where it is, a lot of people are forced to not really show their culture or be open about who they are, because they get kind of frowned upon, right? And it's like racism is a thing there. And more importantly, I think I don't even want to say erasing, but erasing identity is what I felt like a lot of the time growing up there. Not being able to openly like speak Spanish around my white peers because it was frowned upon. Not being able to just feel super comfortable all the time because of my skin color. And I'm not saying that that's happening now or that it's still a pressing issue, but that's what I grew up with there. And it wasn't that I always felt discriminated against, but I did feel the differences of growing up there, and the cultural appropriation that had to be done for me to just live in that space. And when it comes to topics like this with my dad, he isn't for that administration that's happening now at all, at all. But it's more of coming to terms with the understanding of human acceptance as a whole, and I don't know about you, but like in the Hispanic culture, a lot of it, there is a ton of racism towards other races that aren't just Latin. And so talking about those things more of in the space of, well, how would you feel if your child wasn't able to go outside and is constantly looking over their shoulder, is being pulled over just for being in the drive-through, is being shot down just because of their skin color, you know? And it's creating awareness that this is real reality for a lot of people. So his views, he's not pro the administration that's going on. He totally wants change, and he understands that change is a thing. It's more of on a personal level, changing how the views of things are coming. Right? It's just like you don't have to agree with me. You just have to be aware that other people are facing these things currently. And it's like more of those conversations, which sometimes are a little uncomfortable, if I'm being completely honest. But it's like if we're not having them with the people we love, then that's kind of a loss for us, right? Because we want to be able to talk about these things openly with our family. And again, they don't have to agree with it. just waking them up a little bit to what people are facing. So it was in that space and in mind that general election came to be. And just so a little bit of background, me and Ariel, Leah, and Lizzie, which we're all friends with, we had a book club, and we had been reading a few of the recommended books for just like racial awareness and equality issues. And after one of the books that we read, I brought up the idea and notion that I was like, hey, what if we kind of use the skills that we already have and create a voter education campaign and push it more and more honed in on first time voters and young voters, because a lot of the resources that they had previously aren't going to be available to them now because all the colleges are shut down. And they're like, yeah, that actually sounds like a cool idea. And so that started taking motion, and we weren't thinking much about it. We were just like, we felt very passionate about it. And so the same ideas that we had been putting behind branding and strategy for like big festivals or concert venues, we started putting behind what we were doing. And it's like, great, let's do kind of grassroots campaign. Let's build up an audience. Let's start creating content. Let's start creating a network of people that are going to want to contribute to this space that are also within the music space, right? And it's like, I think when people think about the music industry, they don't think about people that are within that space as a whole, right? They just think about the promoter, they think about the artist management. But who's pushing those people? You have graphic designers, you have videographers, you have admins, you have marketing teams. It's an entire group of people that create the facade for all these things that people really love. And it's like, cool, let's grab our friends let's grab our friends and let's do it. And so we were like, well, let's start thinking about what we can do here. And a lot of it was just asking people to share, just talking to people, because I do think that this space is untouched by a lot of the people that we know as far as like venues and promoters and stuff, because it's sticky and it's a little hard to come into it being like, yeah, this is what we believe in. But we wanted to come at it from, sorry, my dog is barking. Hey, calm down. Okay, it's just Amazon. We wanted to come at it from an easy, digestible approach of this information and nonpartisan, because that way other brands would be able to pick up the information that we're putting out and share it. So one of the things that we're working on, for example, we are launching a marquee campaign September 3rd here in LA. And all we're asking music venues in LA to do is change their marquee to something simple like, are you registered to vote? Here's the deadline. And then take that campaign nationwide on October 3rd when it's a month out from the actual voting date. And it's simple things like that that are experiential, that are cool, right? And it's like people are going to take notice, even if it's someone passing by, they'll take a picture, they'll repost, they'll share. And it also gives the venues content to share on their end as well. And so it's like, let's think about other ways we can engage the same audience you were used in before and keep building on that. And honestly, I've been blown away, Dakin, by the support that people are like just down to do whatever. Like we have radios and radio hosts being like, give us a PSA, we'll do it. give us this. There's TikTok influencers that want to work with us. There's YouTubers that are engaged. And I was just like, again, this is literally just a digital strategy campaign. That's all it is. So it's like, great. How do we interact with these artists? Is that a stream? Are they creating a playlist? Are they doing the 15-second PSA on their Insta story? And again, it's not complicated. It's just about sharing and about talking to each other in the same ways we would talk about otherwise. But right now, again, we're all at a standstill. I really want to utilize all of the amazing people that I've met along the way, because those are the people I want to work with. Those are the people I want to continue to build things with, because that's what makes it cool. It's the people that make it cool. um, and explaining to others that like we're gonna learn together along the way. Like so for some of the people on the team right now, marketing isn't their thing, but they're figuring it out. Like, how do we do like boots on the ground kind of marketing? Let's figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially how do you do boots on the ground when you aren't allowed to leave your house?
Which is also interesting. It's like a lot of the things that we were used to doing are going to be hard to do. And it's like, but we can still use those spaces, right? And we can still use our networks. And again, people are, I think, are really down to do something right now when they're at a lull, and figure out how to collab on like some really cool stuff, whether that's art, whether that's photography, whether that's video, whatever it is. Again, it's creating culture. It's something that we already know how to do.
So something that me and my wife talk about a lot is there's a need for leadership in general right now, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. Is you've kind of oddly enough taken what you learned starting at part-time punks, and you're leading a movement because you see that nobody else is really doing it in the same level, that the way that you want to do it. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And obviously, venues need people voting because right now their survival depends on this coming election.
Totally.
Yeah, and musicians and artists, and wow, this is, yeah, you're doing very, very good work.
And thank you. It's not even about that though. I really want to be able to support this community that we built. And that's, it's hard to watch everything stop and people go through really hard times, and it's like, holy crap, it's millions of people that are out of work. The venues that we know and love are going under because they can't pay their bills. Like, and it's like, wow, how is there no support for this entire, what I say, a huge economy? It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like $1 billion or more economy, and I'm just like, no one's helping, no one's trying to move into these spaces. Like, we have Neva, and that's awesome. I support what they're doing. I think that's great, but let's be real, part of it's people voting, people wanting to make change and engage, and it's like, we have to come at it from all angles, because that's the only way we're going to save our community. It's really important. And again, they can, like, it's not just about doing the work, it's about engaging all of us in it. That's what is like super like driving me right now, right? It's just like, cool, Dakin wants to talk to me, let's do it. Let's talk about music, let's talk about things we really care about, let's talk about records and stuff like that that's relevant to us, because that's how we met, that's how we are connected. Like, and it's like, if you don't continue to feed these relationships in that way, then what's the point? Like, there really isn't one. Like, I want to continue to do this with people, and like be able to talk to you about what I'm doing, be able to hear about what you're doing, and be like, this is cool, let's work on something together.
Yeah, it's also kind of part of that family-ish element of all of the places we both worked is, yeah,
Yeah.
staying in touch with each other and continuing to work on things and continuing to work to make sure we can do that work. That sounded like word jumble coming out of my mouth, but
No, it's great. And I really love that you're doing this and that you're taking the time. I think conversations are hard to have. And more importantly, conversations that are dear to heart. Because talking about our journey to where we are isn't always the easiest. Because you have to remember, you have to go back into those memories. Some of them might not be super great. And you realize that, like, fuck, I had a ton of shit jobs. But you know what I mean? It's those shit jobs and the people that were in those spaces with me that I fucking love. Like, those are the ones that I want to be in the trenches with, and that I want to continue to grow with. And like obviously we're gonna meet more people along the way that are gonna help and support, but that's the core. That's the fam. Like
I want to get out of the serious realm for just a moment. There's one really big thing that you did once a couple of years ago that I want to know the story, and I never really got the story from talking to you socially. How did you end up playing Coachella?
oh man, that's a whole other thing. So I ended up taking over all of the kind of DJ and camping production assets for Coachella when my boss left. And
And what year was this?
this was 2018, I believe.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Every year is a blur to me, so I remember it happening, but I don't remember exactly what year it was.
yeah, he left 2018, and so for the 2019 year, I ended up taking over all of that and working with our awesome coordinator Jeremy and our project manager Jimmy Benebuerta, I believe is the last name. And in the process, like we're all super creative, we're all DJs, we all know how to produce something, and the way it works, if I'm being honest, like for a lot of the programming that's out there, as far as like the dome and camping and all the stages inside, is we pull from our friends. We pull from our list of being like, hey, have you seen this DJ? Like, oh, let's go out and let's go look at their set tonight. Like stuff like that. Again, we have to be engaged and be part of the scene to be going out all the time and like really honing in. But I the boys were like, oh, well, do you want to do a set? And I was like, sure. I was thinking they were gonna put me in like the super chill zone and the camping that holds like 20 people. And I was like, yeah, I'm down. Like, I think I have like an hour to spare at some point. And they ended up putting me on the Mojave stage for both weekends, which was awesome. It was super cool. And obviously, it's like when doors open, so it wasn't like a ton of people, but it was great. And I was one of the only DJs that was spinning vinyl in the, like 120-degree weather. So that was interesting. And kind of there was some learning curves. Like, for example, it was so hot and they had like these really big fans in front of me, and like they kept the record, made the record keep skipping. And I'm like,
Oh no.
but it's like things like that. And one of my, I'm going to tell you this funny story about DJing, because in the middle of DJing, I was still in charge of like all the digital content that was going out of all the like tech innovations that were happening on site. And so I had my two like turntables, and then I had my Microsoft Surface plugged in. And on my Microsoft Surface, I would be playing music, and I would be like emailing while I'm DJing. I'm like, it was to me, it was like hilarious because I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm just DJ and also doing work and like DJ. So to me, that was really funny. Um, and then I ended up doing a set out in camping, which, by the way, was one of the funniest and like funnest sets I've ever played. It was just maybe 500 people in this dome, just from like 9 to 11. I was on and I was just playing nothing but like throwback 90s dance music, and people were super into it. It was really great. It was super fun. And then at some point during one of the weekends, our head of like food and beverage was like, oh, we're looking for people to play our secret tiki bar or disco bar. And I was like, oh, I have a ton of disco records, like I'm totally down to do that. And I ended up doing an hour set there, which was really really fun. And it was pretty cool because the bar was so small that they would funnel people out every like 10 minutes, and so it was like probably like 30 people every like couple of minutes. So it was great. Like it was like super fun. Nothing crazy, but I know I did take some time to curate a lot of what I was playing. So before Amoeba Hollywood, rest in peace, closed down, I spent a few weekends going through their bins and just like grabbing a bunch of really cool records that I liked, and also did a mix of digital stuff just because it was easier. And like it's hot. Like I know that I love vinyl, but I don't want to carry around like 4 or 5 cases in like 100-degree weather and like, oh, they're gonna melt. Um, so I did that, but that's how I ended up playing. Honestly, it was just because I was curating that segment, which was really really nice that the guys even wanted to include me in, because like I'm usually like not super down to be in front of people. I like being behind the scenes a lot more. But yeah, that's how I ended up playing Coachella.
Yeah, and you ended up playing 3 sets over the 2 weekends.
It was total of 4 sets over the 2 weekends, which is cool.
That's insane. Also, you did your own job and you worked 5 6 hours on stage while doing your own job.
Yeah, and it's like I always like want to tell people that it's not all glamorous work. Like there were some days that I was probably working like 22 hours a day, and like that's just how it is. You just push through because you have so much stuff to do and you're only one person. Like you're just like cool, let's go, let's keep checking along. It was like I love thinking about the idea that like some days I wouldn't even leave my work trailer. Like I would just sleep on the couch in the work trailer and like get up in the morning and do one of the like the cowboy kind of like toothbrushing kind of stuff and like just like spit over the rail and get back to work, you know? But it was worth it. Like I love that's the kind of stuff that I really really love. I love being able to help curate, produce, and like bring cool stuff to the audiences and be able to share music with people. That's one of my biggest passions. And it's like, to me, sharing music, like, I don't think I'm a pro DJ. Like, I'm not making beats or anything. That's not my forte. But I'm down at mixing. I'm really good at mixing and I'm really good at curating playlists. Which, by the way, I had a few like cool projects that came out of like me DJing Coachella. Like, I became one of like the resident DJs at H Club in Hollywood, which is like a private club, and I would come in like twice a month to just do like an hour to 3 hour set, and each one was themed differently, which was cool. And then I ended up doing, I can't remember what the name of the spot is, but in Palm Springs, I ended up helping curate the music for this spa resort in Palm Springs that was just like super cool, and also like I've never done that before. And by the way, it was really intense. Like, it's like, yeah, we need like 30 hours of music for the front desk, and we need 30 hours of music for breakfast time, and 30 hours of music for lunch and dinner. But it was cool. It was a really great learning experience trying to figure out what works in those spaces, what actually matches their vibe, what's cool to do, what's not cool to do. So I'm super stoked, and I'm glad I'm glad that you brought that up. I honestly forget that I DJ
Did you watch any episodes of the Full House revamp?
of the Full House revamp.
So I watched like four for some reason, but there's an episode where Stephanie Tanner accidentally DJs Coachella as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love.
yeah, and then your story reminded me of that. This was incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me. I'm really happy with what you're doing with your marketing skills and how you're getting out the vote and getting the industry to drive people to vote right now. And yeah, keep up the good work.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I love chatting with you. It's always fun, and it's always like you always bring up questions that I hadn't even thought about, or again, just talking about myself. I don't really like to. um, but I'm always down to come out of my shell if it's for a good cause, and if it's rad to talk about, especially with you. It was really fun. And I hope that everyone that listens to this tunes into general election. We have some really great things in the works for the next month or so. So stay tuned. Some of it's music stuff, which is going to be cool. And I'll share that with you as it comes out.
Excellent. I'd like to thank Vickki Acuna for joining us today on Spinning Platters Presents How Did I Get Here? Be sure to follow General Election LA on Instagram, Twitter, and all of the socials. And I'll have links to so much stuff in the description. Links to all of General Election's different social media feeds, a bunch of different articles that they've written about how to register to vote, how to get your mail-in ballot on time, just some things you need to know as a first-time voter. Lots of good information. Share with your friends, family members. Really, just anything we can do to get the vote out. Vicki's Instagram, LinkedIn, and Spotify are there too. We don't normally post people's Spotifys, but Vicki's a woman of exquisite taste. And we've already talked about some of the playlists that she's made, so follow her. Thanks again, And once again, if you want to leave me a tip because you enjoyed what you heard and that information was good, as I've said many times before on this thing, I'm not working right now and, you know, could use some income. So you can Venmo me at Dakin, that's capital D, AKIN, dash Hardwick, capital H, lowercase ARDWICK. Just a couple of bucks if you got some joy out of this and want to help keep it alive. Thanks again, and you'll hear from us next week because, yes, we're going to be putting out these weekly for a little bit. I know, right?